The Mind Series, Episode 3, Decatastrophizing. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Series. Today we are going to be talking about decatastrophizing, and I'm pretty sure I made that word up, but I'll explain what it means in a minute. So by way of quick review, the breath series, remember all of that was about breathing. We know that when we use our breath appropriately, we can shift our nervous system from fight or flight, which is where we go when we're stressed, into rest or digest, and that's where we heal. So breathing will get us there. After we've gotten into rest or digest, really just stretching is a good way. We talked about the body series, stretching to release the tension out of our bodies. After we've gotten into rest and digest, after we've released the tension from our bodies, then we can start looking at the cognitive patterns that might be predisposing us to stress or making us more vulnerable to stress than we really need to be. So in the first episode of the Mind series, we talked about cognitive reframing. In the second episode, we talked about recontextualizing. And today we're talking about decatastrophizing. And again, I think I'm making all these words up, but even though I'm making the words up, the constructs are valid. So let's throw it over to the PowerPoint. Decatastrophizing. What is decatastrophizing? Well, let's look at the definition of catastrophizing. It's when you assume the worst will happen. Okay, so let me give you an example of what that's like. So I think back, you might think of it as some people call it like a snowball effect. So I think back to my first year as a school psychologist. I really felt like I had no clue what I was doing. I just really struggled with imposter syndrome, and these guys are going to figure it out and they're going to fire me. And so, I was just really stressed, and I was thinking like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then somebody's going to figure it out and they're going to fire me. And if I get fired from this job, then I'll never get hired again because this was my first job out of graduate school, and everybody thinks I should be smart because they call me doctor. And then if I get fired from this first job, who's going to want to hire me again? And if I don't get hired again, what was the point of all of the student loan debt and all that time I invested in a PhD? I'll never get a job again. I'm going to end up working, if I'm lucky, I'll get a job as a barista. And then if that doesn't work out, me and my children and my wife will be under a bridge, we'll work for food with my PhD. I'm going to hold up my PhD and say, we'll work for food. So anyway, silly here, there. I'm just going to throw in a laugh track. Maybe that wasn't even funny. But the idea was that this snowball effect, like, oh my gosh, the worst case scenario, right, is that I get fired and I never get hired again and I'm unemployed and I can't provide for my family. I mean, I was going there in my mind. That is catastrophizing. That is catastrophizing. So now, again, it's when you assume the worst will happen. It's when you keep asking, what if? Well, what if? Well, what if? Well, what if I get a bad review? Then I won't get rehired. Well, what if I don't get rehired? Then nobody will ever hire me. What if I never get a job? Then we're going to starve. Well, what if we starve? Then we're all going to die and it's all my fault. Again, that is the snowball. So decatastrophizing is this. Instead of asking what if, ask so what if? So what if? So I think back to the my first year as a school psychologist, and I'm doing my best work, the best way. I mean, I wasn't perfect, obviously I was making mistakes, but so what if I get a bad review? Well, typically what that means is you try better next time. You get supervision, you get support, you get what you need to do better. Well, what if that support doesn't work? Well, so what if that support doesn't work? You keep looking for more options, So the so what if question is really just a way to push back on ourselves. When we start thinking the worst case scenario and going down the worst path and getting into that rabbit hole of catastrophizing, so what if? It's just a quick way to help us remember that, hey, look, it's probably not as big a deal, or at least possibly it's not as big a deal as you're making it. So again, decatastrophizing, it's just this, instead of asking, well, what if? Well, what if? What if? We stop and we say, you know what? So what if? So what if? Is it really the end of the world? Is it really the end of my life? And very rarely do we struggle with issues that truly represent life-threatening situations. So that's it in this Mind series, episode 3. I want you to think about the things that stress you out right now, and ask yourself, to what degree am I locked in the what if pattern? Well, what if this? Well, what if that? Well, what if this? Well, what if that? And then start to ask yourself, so what if? Well, so what if that happens? What's the worst case scenario, realistically speaking, and how can I possibly recover from that? And I think when you do that, you'll find that that it's possible that you are really making mountains out of molehills, and these molehills are very surmountable. So that's it, another episode of the Mind series. I hope you found it helpful, and we will see you again next time.